would you say the average cost of an average army of 2,000 points? What would that cost, including dice, paints, etc.?
With the paints and everything, it's probably around 1,000.
Damn. So this isn't just like a hobby. This is a hobby.
It is a hobby. That's why they call it, the plastic crack. It's pricey. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that if I sold off all this, I could probably buy a car or something. But I'm not going to do that.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Tell Me About the Show, where I have a lot of questions, and thankfully I've got friends and colleagues on the internet who have those answers. Today, we are joined by somehow both friend and colleague.
Maybe foe.
Yeah, maybe foe.
Occasionally.
It's that time that I bring in a ringer, someone that I know knows so much more than I'll ever know about a subject. We did Warhammer 40k. I've dabbled in Warhammer Age of Sigmar and the various fantasy verses, but truth be told, really it's just kind of like the lore and what's going on in those universes and what factions are what and that kind of thing. But I've only dipped a toe in the world of actual Warhammer figures and gameplay and the tabletop aspects of it. Thankfully, Crendor is someone who has spent a lot of time doing that, and I hopefully will get my answers on what is that about. Crendor, thanks for coming by and talking with me.
Hey, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I can't wait for you to tell me about all the things currently in the background of your office there, because having been there, this is the cleanest I've ever seen it. Things are in bins. Yeah. There are figures on a shelf.
Well, I spring cleaned a bit, so that
I can tell.
That helped out. Yes, I play a lot of Warhammer, and I'll tell you right, because some people are like, it's gonna take forever to explain lore stuff to Jesse. I'm like, he already learned about the lore. All right, I don't care about the lore. I'm here because I love the plastic miniatures and playing games and painting them, and that's it. The lore's okay. I mean, for me, it's a little bonus. I'm like, oh, that's pretty neat, but I don't play the game because of the lore. Also, you play factions that lore really is unimportant. You're like, yeah, my Skaven guy, he kills for the great horned one. So that's cool. Like, that's pretty much your vibe. Well, Skaven are very much paranoid, to the point where I believe when I read their lore, they said they could have been the most powerful faction if they put their minds together to work together, but they're all paranoid, like, he's gonna backstab me. That none of them work together, so it kind of balances it all out. So yeah, in a way, I'm kind of a Skaven. You are kind of a Skaven. That's not where I was going with this, but I'm glad you admitted it up front. Yeah. That, I'm kind of a Skaven. I know for a fact that you have dabbled in Skaven, orcs, you have messed with Space Marines and 40k things. You have even tried some of the bigger models. You have pretty much done all sorts of different painting and assembling and playing. And I guess my question for you right at the top is, looking at all this, as a person who, like myself, has seen videos online where it's guys who are like, this is our 2200 point Armada versus another 2200 point Tyrannid force, and rolling 80 D6s if I get a 3 and a 4, and it seems overwhelming. And then guys bring out measuring tape. Oh yeah, you gotta have your measuring tape. Right? So it seems way, way overwhelming compared to just reading about the lore or watching a movie or whatever. Where is the entry point? How do I just get into this without it being a deluge of information and stats and math and dice rolls? Where do I start? All right, so you're going to start at the very beginning, which is just... okay, that seems a good place. Which isn't the lore. It's getting the models, all right? Because you have to start somewhere, and it starts by getting your first model. And that's honestly overwhelming, I think, for a lot of people. So I got my first Warhammer. A lot of people think I started with Blood Bowl, with TB and the TGS Blood Bowl League and everything, but I didn't. I started when I was 13 years old, all right? My friend got the Warhammer 6th edition box set. It was like Orcs versus Empire or something. It was whatever. But my friend played the Orcs. His brother played the Empire, or the humans, which, disgusting. And then I was like, dude, I got to get something. And so it was around my birthday. And so I got the Lizard Men and I got my Slan. Okay. This old ass metal Slan. I actually bought the recreation of them because they brought it back years later. And it is, hold on. In fact, I think I got him over here. Oh, I'm going to show you.
Okay.
Right?
We got to see this guy. Yeah. If you have props, you might as well bring him out.
There it is. You can hear the metal bits. All right. Here he is. He comes in this little box, all these metal pieces. Okay. So I'm 13 years old and I open this and it's all metal. I'm like, the hell do I do with this?
Sure.
So I kind of just moved him around as if he was just a like frog by himself. It was almost like an action figure, right? So like here he is. Here's your Slan. Can't even see him there.
Not even remotely. He's far too metallic.
Right. So that was kind of my first introduction to Warhammer. But in my 13-year-old brain, I was like, this is amazing. This is so cool. We got these like, they're like adult action figures. So I was like, I'm 13. I'm becoming a big kid, right? I'm an adult, so I'm going to play with these. And so we kind of just didn't know what we were doing. We would just like roll random dice and be like, I rolled a 6, you're dead. Like we just did kid stuff. We're like, whatever. So his box came with this book. All right. Warhammer Fantasy 6th edition. All right. This is some lore and a lot of rules. I would argue that half this book is rules.
That already seems overwhelming.
It is, which is part of the reason. That's part of the reason they discontinued Warhammer Fantasy after a point, because it was very overwhelming. However, it was fun to read through and be like, dude, this is so cool. Hold on, can I show? I think I can even. I got the Slan in here. All right, here he is. I'll show you. Quick little. All right, you see him? There he is, built. So looking through that as a kid, I was like, this is so cool. So I did all that. We played for a bit, and then, as kids do, we just moved on because we were like, all right, we're done with that. So, years later, after all the stuff, it was like 2019, and Classic WoW was going, and it came back, right? It's like, oh, nostalgia, we're playing Classic WoW again. And then somebody was like, Crendor, you should play Warhammer again. And I was like, you know what, I should. Because I was like, I can go back and I can like actually build and paint stuff unlike I could when I was 13, because now I have like a somewhat more grown brain, and I have money. So that helps. That helps a lot. You need money. And so I was like, all right, this is great. And I got my first model. So I went into a games workshop and I was like, hey, I haven't played in like forever. I need to get models. Like I want to play Lizardman, whatever. And they're like, all right. So they had a start collecting box. Okay. And it came with 10 Saurus warriors. Actually, it might have been like 11. It was like some random ass number. And like 8 Saurus knights, which looked terrible, and a Carnosaur with a Saurus Old Blood or a Scar veteran. You can build it either way. And then I started building it, and that was it. I was hooked. This is it. This is everything I thought it would be. But it does become overwhelming when you start building everything, and you're like, all right, now what do I do? So the hardest part is getting started and knowing how to get started, because you can get overwhelmed very quickly with those starter boxes. So my advice is you can go into like a game store or a games workshop or whatever, and they'll actually like give you lessons in how to get, like they'll tell you what you need. They'll tell you like, oh, you need clippers, you need like this, and like usually they're pretty helpful. Like no matter where you go, like they're actually pretty nice. But because you don't need a lot. Some people are like, I need like 50 paints. I need like all this stuff. Like you really don't need that many. But my advice is don't go crazy when you start, because you're gonna walk in, you're gonna see all the models, and you'll be like, I like Space Marines, I like Skaven, I like whatever. Buy the like 10 rat box. Okay, that's it. Not like exactly the 10 rat, but like the small amount of models, like 20 skinks or like 10 Space Marines, like whatever you want. Because if you buy something really big, you're gonna get paralysis. You're gonna get that thing where you're like, I gotta build it and paint it, and like I don't want to ruin it. I haven't even painted before, right? But if you got like 20 rats and you build and paint a rat and you mess it up, you're like, whatever, I got 19 more rats, right? So that's always my like go-to tip is when you first start, buy the like $30 box of like battle line chaff garbage and
Sure.
see how you enjoy building and painting those.
Yeah, I very much understand, because I too have been hit with the overwhelm, because I was talking about Warhammer and how I was interested in it, and I said, man, after playing Total War, I love me some Chaos. I think Archaon's cool as hell, and someone sent me the $160 Archaon the Everchosen, and I was like, I can't make this. If I put this together and I suck at it, I just wasted that money. And then I gotta paint it and make it look good, and it's a paralysis thing. Thankfully, you were there, and we, in Chicago, went to a Games Workshop shop, and while you were buying cool things, I ended up getting Slambo, a Chaos Knight, who I think was like $5. It's just him by himself with 2 axes.
Yep.
I had to assemble, I think, nothing, and all I did was paint him. And my painting was terrible. It wasn't very good. I made him almost completely purple, but it was fun, and I got to experience it and get kind of the jitters out of the way of learning what to do. And from that point on, I was like, okay, well, I don't necessarily want to set up an army or have a bunch of stuff like shelves of figures, but they do have things like little Chaos imp guys, or you can get a pack of, it's like a demon book, and there's also like an imp guy in it, and then there's like, and you can do little tiny painting, or you can get background, right? You can get spires and ruins and various castle parts and paint those to learn how to paint bigger things. And so that's what I was doing, and I was like, okay, I think I liked the painting, this is fun, but I've never transitioned beyond the painting, right? Because the painting, I feel like for me, is the interesting fun part, and I can sit there and it's just like a coloring book, or any type of, you just sit down and relax. And so that's why I enjoy it, and you can just paint away and live your life. Now, there is a point where it's like, you can put grass on the ground, and you can put mud and rocks, and you can have blood on your characters or viscera. And once you get to that, that's too skilled for me. I see people do that online. I'm like, my God, you're talented. I am not. My guy, again, my guy was all purple. There was no subtlety to his armor. I was like, he's gonna be like Thanos, and I'm gonna call him Slam Bro. And that was what I did, and it was terrible.
I mean, honestly, for your first thing, it was pretty good. I would
Thank
say,
you.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty good, because everybody's first model is gonna suck, no matter what it is. And so you just kind of learn from there, and then eventually, you get better, just like literally anything. Yeah, you hit a point where you're like, do I want to just paint? Like, because that's what a lot of people do. They just like painting. They like just sitting there chilling, building, painting, and then you just put it on a shelf, like I got over here, and it sits there, and you're like, that looks pretty cool. I want to paint something else, right? That's what some people do. But some people, like me, love RNG and rolling dice, all right? And playing with big action figure-esque toys, as if you're playing a Total War game in real life. So I was like fully into it. I was like building everything. I'm like, this is so cool. And then the people at the other local game store I went to were like, you ever think about playing the game? Because we can like teach you. And I was like, I would like to learn how to play the game. And
Did they see you just come in and buy models all the time, and they were like, what's this guy doing? Is he just painting? And that's why they reached out to you?
Probably, I think so. They're just like, listen, you're like buying and painting all this stuff, but like you can learn how to play the game too. And I was like, I have always wanted to play the game, because I played it incorrectly way back when. But now is when we reach the state of the game. All right, because there's variations of Warhammer. All right, it's not just like you play Warhammer. There's Age of Sigmar, which is what fantasy used to be. Then they killed it off, and they created Age of Sigmar. So a lot of fantasy people are like, I hate Age of Sigmar. It killed fantasy, right? That's like a deep-seated hatred that's buried there. So some people are just like, I'll never play Sigmar. Then there's 40K, which is what most people know about, is 40K. Then there's Warhammer Old World, which is essentially classic WoW. They went back and brought back Warhammer Fantasy. They made some like changes here and there, but it's for the most part like how Warhammer Fantasy played. And then there's also little skirmish games. So there's like Warhammer, what do they call it? Spearhead. They just brought that out for Sigmar. It's essentially a like skirmish Sigmar game where you can play with like a smaller amount of units. So they sell what used to be the start collecting boxes. They've now changed to Spearhead boxes, and you can buy one of those boxes, and that's good enough to play the game of Spearhead against your friends. So they wanted that to be like an entry point, because they were like, we need a better entry point than what we currently have. So
oh no, agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
So literally everybody was like, yeah, this is a good idea, because otherwise it's a lot if you aren't like fully committed. So let's start from like, let's say you want to play Age of Sigmar, because that's what I've played the most of. But I do play 40K. In fact, I've played 40K every week for the past like 5 weeks early, because I don't really like the Sigmar meta right now, and neither do people I play with. That's besides the point. All right. So
you really are in it. You know when you're talking the meta, you're deep in it.
Yeah. So I started playing in 2019. So it's been 6 years I've been playing. All right. I've played hundreds of games at this point. There's a few base rules that are kind of similar across all the various games. All right.
Okay.
So number one is each model has its own, I guess they call it data sheet or war scroll or just whatever. It's a card that shows you the details about your unit. So I'll send you this one right here. All right. This is a Spearhead Clan Rat War Scroll. Okay.
All right.
It's very basic.
Yes.
All right. It's Spearhead War Scroll Clan Rats. Okay. And it's got 6 move, 1 health, 5 save, 1 control.
What does any of that mean?
So 6 move is just 6 inches of movement. So you need your
which is why you need to pull out your measuring tape.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So like I bought a little one. I didn't bring it in. But I got like a little measuring tape, and you just pull it out 6 inches. And so if you want to move your guys, there's a phase where you move them and you just measure 6 inches and they move 6 inches. That's what that means. There's various ways you can change that. There's like buffs to increase your movement. There's running or advancing, which lets you move further. There's a whole bunch of stuff, but that's the base value is like they can move 6 inches. All right. The save is when they get hit, they're going to face some sort of damage that has rend, or in 40K it's AP, which is armor penetration. Okay. And so when you get hit by an attack with no rend, no AP, just a standard no rend attack, they will have a 5-up save against that. So you have to roll a 5 to block it.
Or higher.
Or higher. Yeah. If you roll a 6, it blocks it as well. Usually 6s are like always success. 1s are always failure. That's what it usually is. Control is just like holding an objective for things like capture the, or not cap, like there's an objective and you got models on it. Each one's going to count as like 1. And
so maybe an objective requires 12. So you need to have, in this case, 12 clan rats on that objective.
Not necessarily. An objective is just, the objective is just there. Okay. But if somebody else has a Carnosaur on it, that Carnosaur is worth like 10. So it is worth more than a clan rat. So, but if you have 15 clan rats on it, then they have more.
Then it's worth more than a Carnosaur.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
But there is no, you need to have X number of people on it to capture it. It's just whoever has the most has that.
Correct. There may be different game types that play around with that, but in like a base setting, that's how it kind of works. And then health is each clan rat has 1 health because they're clan rats and they die. So that's it. Like it's not too difficult to understand that part.
And so then, looking at the rest of the card, there's the melee weapon, which in this case is a rusty blade. Can you change the melee weapons, or do all the clan rats only have rusty blades?
Now,
oh boy.
Back in the 2nd edition, you did have the ability to choose between weapons, but then we got the 3rd edition, and they kind of brought that down a little bit. They got rid of a lot of the options, and now in 4th edition, they just simplified it. They're like, this is too confusing. We're just going to give them all the same weapon. So it's both good and bad because it takes away a little bit of the option, but then it also just makes it easier for people to get into it and play the game, which is, I think that's what they mainly wanted. However, this is like the same thing people complain about where they're like, my options. And then they take the best one of the 2 anyway and just go with that. So it's like, you're just taking the best one anyway.
So earlier you mentioned you could build, I don't remember what you said, like a Carnosaur or something, and then you could determine whether you put an Old Blood or like a Scar Veteran or whatever on top of it. In this case, looking at the clan rats, I see that one guy clearly has what is probably a rusty blade, and one guy just has a stick with spikes on it.
Yeah.
I'm assuming those are for flavor and not necessarily matter to the damage they're doing, but if you're picking the Carnosaur, for example, and you put someone on his back, does the person on the back matter? Or is it just the Carnosaur that is the thing that matters, and the back is the flavor bit?
It does matter, because they are counted.
Okay.
They are counted as separate units with different profiles. So like the Scar Veteran has a different profile than the Old Blood. Like the Old Blood's got a gauntlet that shoots lasers. The Scar Veteran's got a big shield and a spear. So like they have different things. Like the Scar Veteran can't shoot. He's got different abilities. So it does matter which one you build. However, sometimes when you play, people will be like, hey, this guy looks like a Scar Veteran, but today I'm using him as an Old Blood, just so you know, as like a proxy type of thing. So they don't want to go out and spend another $100
Gotcha.
to do that.
Okay. Sure, sure. And so going into it, without the knowledge of what either of those two do, if you just build a thing and you say, I like the way this guy looks, you're legally allowed to go in and say, today it's not that guy. I've learned to play. I just like the way that one looked, but really I want it to be this other guy, and everyone's going to be chill with that.
Yeah, as long as you're playing with chill people. Because they're will, if you go to a tournament or something and you're like, these are this, they'd be like, well, you should build them like that then, right? There's going to be that one guy. But for them, like high 90% of people will be like, all right, cool. As long as you're like telling them that's what it is. That's all they care about. So they only have that weapon. So it makes it easy. So each clan rat has a rusty blade, which gets 2 attacks. Okay, that's important. Because that means if you have 10 clan rats, you're getting 20 attacks. Right.
All right. And then how do you determine that damage? So you have 20 attacks on your clan rats. What is the process for attacking then?
We get to we'll just do the basic clan, all right? Let's say 1 clan rat's hitting you, all right? So he has 2 attacks. So you roll 2 dice. The attacks is essentially how many dice you're rolling. And you're hitting on 4s. So that means for every 4 you roll, you have hit. So that means your weapon has made contact with the enemy. Then you have to roll to see if it wounded, because you may have hit them, but maybe it hit their armor, or maybe it hit their skin and just didn't penetrate the skin or something, right?
Okay.
So clan rats are weak because they're clan rats. So they're wounding on 5s, which is bad. So you may have hit, and then let's say on average you're hitting with one of the 2, and then you get lucky and you're like, dude, I rolled a 5 or a 6. Then you're like, all right, I hit you with 1. It doesn't have any rend because it's a shitty rusty blade, so it's not penetrating anything, and it does 1 damage. So you're like, you have 1 at no rend is usually what you would say. And then your opponent rolls their save roll, so they might have like a 3-up or a 4-up or whatever, it depends on what it is. And if they succeed in their save, they're like, I blocked it, or I saved it. And then if they miss, they would take 1 damage.
So my assumption then, based on clan rats and their low damage, is you're supposed to be flooding the field with these guys. So you're never going to have 1 clan rat attack 1 person. It's going to be like 20 clan rats are coming in. And so you're moving all of them individually across the map. Mm-hmm. Or can you just, 1 guy's good enough and we're going to move the group, and then you just dump a bunch of dice and count? Is that basically what you're doing?
So let's get into army building a little bit. All right. You can understand.
Okay. All right. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So when you put together an army, okay, you're going to look at your models that you have and be like, how do I build an army? So each game has their own way of building armies, depending on which one you're playing. So for Sigmar, you pick the army you want, and then you pick a style of army you want to play. So for example, if you're Skaven, you can be clan Pestilin, you can be clan Verminous, you can be clan Scryer, right? You kind of pick that, and then based on what you pick, your army gets different bonuses that they can play with. So if you're like, I pick clan Scryer, you're probably going to take Scryer units because they get bonuses that they benefit with from being that. So it's kind of like sub-factions, they call it.
Okay, so this is like when you talk about 40K, for example, all the Space Marines have the different chapters. And those are basically like collectible. Like, yeah, I don't want to be an Ultramarine. I want to be the Wolfmen Marines or whatever. You want to do like a different, and that's just for your own personal tastes of what you connect with, basically. Same thing with the rats, I would imagine.
Space Wolves are their own army, actually.
All right, well, I picked a terrible example.
You picked a terrible example, but I also hate Space Marines because it feels like Space Marines can like combine 15 armies into one, but they like kind of separate them into own different thing. For example, a better example would be like Tyranids, okay? You have things called detachments, which everybody gets detachments. And detachments are kind of like your sub faction type where you pick a detachment based on how you're going to play. They give you like different ways to play. So if I'm playing big monster Tyranids with a bunch of like colossal monsters and stuff, you're probably going to take the colossal detachment that gives your monsters buffs. And then,
gotcha. Okay.
So it's kind of just like some more bonuses towards how you're playing the game. Okay. So that's one of the first things you pick because you're like, how am I going to play? What type of models do I have? Every army also gets their own bonuses. So for example, Clan Rats have one, or Skaven have one, where every time it's your opponent's turn, you can move a unit as if it's your movement phase. So it's kind of like they're sneaking around. Every army has little things like that. So like Khorne generates blood tithe points. Orcs used to be better. They kind of suck now, but like they used to, they'd get hit and like they can move whenever they got hit. Like every army gets little things like that. You figure out how you're going to play, what you're going to do that. And then you start building your list, which Games Workshop gives you a list of all the models that are currently legally allowed to be played, which is like everything they sell. And everything has a point value on it. Okay. So for Clan Rats, it'll tell you how many Clan Rats are in a unit and how many points that is, and that's what you can bring. So, for example, if I'm like, I want to bring Clan Rats, you can have a minimum of 20 Clan Rats if you bring Clan Rats.
A minimum?
A unit of Clan Rats is 20 Clan Rats.
Right, okay.
And so every unit has a certain amount of models in it. You can also reinforce that unit. It used to be crazier. Reinforcement is just like you double it. So you have 40 Clan Rats. So the most Clan Rats you can have in a unit is 40.
And so you could, at any point in time, have 40 separately painted rats on the field, and that's just part of your army.
You can have multiple packs of 40 rats. Yes.
Damn, okay.
In fact, I currently have, I believe, 80 to 100 rats.
Oh, I'm aware. In one of those bins behind you is just a pile of rats.
Yeah, every one of these bins, which I've put behind me, is an army. So you can see I've stacked them. People will be like, your models are just crushing each other. Listen, when you have this much Warhammer, things got to get crushed. And then I have this area for the cool stuff that I paint. And then, you know, it all just depends what I'm feeling.
When you're at that scale, when you're at the scale of 40, 80, 120 Clan Rats, are you painting all of those in any efficient way? Or are you just assembling, throwing them in a bin and being like, no one cares if they're painted? Like, do they have to be painted?
Some tournaments do make it so you have to play with painted armies. Others don't care. It just kind of depends. Some people just like to play against painted armies, but a lot of people don't. They just play against each other with like unpainted stuff or like even just unprimed stuff, just like whatever it's there. The big thing is that you have to decide on a point value limit. So when people get started, they usually start with like 500 to 1,000. So that's like a good learning amount. You don't have to play with too many things. 20 Clan Rats might be like 120 points. So if you reinforce that and bring 40 Clan Rats, it's like 240. If you're playing 1,000 points, that's like a fourth of your army already, right? You have to kind of build something that's going to be good. Some people be like, I brought all these Clan Rats, but then you have nothing that kills anything. So you have to construct the army in a way that's going to have different parts of it. So usually Clan Rats are there to like get in the way. That's what they're there for. So you might have your big Vermin Lord or like Storm Fiends or crazy damage dealing stuff sitting behind the rats, and your opponent wants to get to those damage dealing things and kill them, but there's just a wall of rats, and they're like, God, I have to get through this wall of rats. And if you look, it says at the end of any turn, you can return D3 slain models to this unit. So if they kill 6 Clan Rats, at the end of the turn, you roll a dice and bring back D3 rats. So you're like, oh, I rolled a 5, 3 rats come back. So you essentially killed 3 of them. You didn't even kill 6. So they just keep swarming back, and that's kind of their thing. And so people will, I think there was a list at a tournament that ran like 8,000 rats, and they just like flooded the board. And they just like go on all the points, and they're just like, you can't get through. It's like playing the Vermintide, but on a tabletop. People are just like, I can't make it through, right? They try to discourage that, I think, a lot of the times, because it's obviously less fun to play against, but it does happen, especially in tournament settings. Even with like 40K and all these things, people will be like, this is broken, and then they just drive it into the ground until they actually fix it.
No, I'm aware that, you know, the Empire or whatever, for example, they have rocket launchers and things. I assume those are to counter swarms of low HP guys. Is that kind of the vibe?
Yeah, so you have magic, which can counter a lot of things. You have ranged weapons, you have artillery, you have monsters. Like, you have all these different things. It's almost like a rock, paper, scissors, but in a more advanced type of way, where you're like, we have the anti-infantry to counter the infantry, but then we have the anti like spears to counter the, or like, right? So you have like
sort
all
of like that
pieces.
Fire Emblem grid, where it's like the spear
like
counters this, and okay, yeah.
You'll usually have like your damage dealer, like, yo, this is my big monster. It's going to do a bunch of damage, right? So you might have, I'll just use the Carnosaur example again, even though his damage has been all over the place. If he gets into combat with you, he's probably going to kill you, because when he's hitting stuff, it's not like 2 attacks, 4s by 5s, no rend. Like, when he's hitting you with his teeth, I believe his profile's like 5 attacks, 2s by 3, or like 3s by 2s or something. And it's like rend 2 or 3 for like 5 damage. He's like crunching through shit, right? I don't even, somebody's gonna be like, that's not his profile. It's whatever. It doesn't matter. So the main thing is that he has multiple attacks as well. So you're gonna be hitting with, like, you roll 1 attack, then you get to roll his next attack, then you get this. So you're like hitting with multiple things. Like, it's like, here's his 4 limbs. He's like going, and the guy on top's hitting you with his spear. So you're like rolling for each individual attack. So that's why having those types of units are really important, and then protecting them so that they don't just get shot or killed or like whatever. That's why the army building is so important, because you have to kind of have a little bit of everything depending on what you're going to do in your play style.
Right. Okay, so a very similar to the way you would assemble a Blood Bowl team if you're playing that game, or the way you would assemble your armies if you're playing Total War. So the video game versions certainly have some connective tissue to the actual tabletop version in kind of training you what is required to play.
Yeah. No, they definitely do. It's all kind of just, which I guess is it's like chess. You have like all your different pieces. It's a strategy game type of thing. In fact, a lot of people compare it to Magic the Gathering in a way, where you have like all different types of decks and counters and stuff like that. So most people play 2,000 points. So that's like the standard, like 2,000 points, which is usually you get like a decent amount of battle line or chaff units to get in the way and go do stuff. You get a decent amount of like shooting or monsters and like hard hitting guys, and like you get a little bit of everything, which is why 2,000 points is like the standard. That's what they balance the game around most of the time. And that's like kind of across the board. Like 40K is usually 2,000, Sigmar's 2,000. Like that's even for just most of the games, 2,000 points. Which, by the way, all of these bins have minimum 2,000 points of each army in them to show the insanity of my collection.
But it's also different sizes. So some of those are much bigger bins, and I'm sure they have bigger units. And some of them are much smaller and probably just only rats.
Yeah. It's kind of like Warhammer Total War, where like every army has a different play style. So like some of the bins have ogres in it. When I play ogres, I mainly play the Frost Lord guys, which is just ogres on giant Frost Lords that you have like 6 models, and that's your army, because they cost 300 and something points each. And so they just literally go around being like, and they charge into stuff and do damage. And then you're like, that's it. That's all I do. Then there's armies where it's like they have a lot of shooting. So Peregrine Overlords, which are dwarves that have steampunk weapons. They just fly around and shoot stuff. In fact, Skaven is like a big shooting army, because you have so many different things like warp lightning cannons and the big machines that are like, they got a whole bunch of stuff, right? So it kind of depends.
You're describing this very well. They got machines that go, brrr.
They really do. And they go, yes, yes. 40K is kind of similar, but different, because I feel like a lot of people watching probably like, I like 40K. So let me show you a Termagant. All right, this is the Tyranid shitty unit.
Oh, wow. No, this is, in fact, completely different. Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of the same, but different. So if you have a base understanding of one of these games, you can kind of get into the other versions easier, but it's still more to learn. So, for example, you see the 6M, which is just movement. So that's just
time out. Real quick. The image of this Tyranid. Mm-hmm. My assumption was they were kind of like the Zerg in StarCraft, except I'm looking at one that is just carrying a gun that kind of looks like a gun version of itself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they are the Zerg. Zerg is literally based off them.
Yes.
Some of the models are like wacky wild. Like these Termagaints.
I'm looking at it, yeah.
Yeah, they're just like shitty little chaff units that have shitty guns that are not good. But they're just like a 40k version of clan rats in a way. They get in the way. They try to do like objectives, and that's mainly it. So they have a 6-inch move. Okay, now they have 3 toughness. All right, 40k has strength and toughness, which is just another added element of calculation. So the reason they have that is because they have more things like tanks and planes and vehicles. And so if you just had these shitty Termagaints shooting them and there was no element of that, they'd just be like, hey, we're blowing up tanks with like shitty Termagaints. So it makes it so there's like anti-vehicle things, and like it adds another element of balance. So I'll tell you about that in a second.
Okay.
They have 1 wound. They have 8 leadership and then 2 objective control. So that's their control of the objective. So leadership is a mechanic that used to be in Sigmar, and then everyone was like, this sucks, I hate it. And they got rid of it. So in 40k currently, when you do a leadership check, if you fail this check, so you have to roll 2 dice, and if you roll below an 8, you fail, and then your unit like can't control objectives and some other dumb thing. I hate leadership checks, but that's what it is. It's like they can't do things and they become kind of bad.
How do you force a leadership check?
There's different, pretty much if your unit is below half strength, like if you have 10 Termagaints and you lost half of them, or you're at like 4, then you have to do it every time it's your turn. So it's like,
okay.
It's essentially like they're freaking out because they're like dying off, right? So they have to check if they're still like, you know, losing their mind or not yet. It's essentially in like Total War when they're like fleeing from
when they retreat for no reason, and you're like, "Where are you going? You're doing fine," and they're like, "No, dude, we're out of here." Yeah.
But in this, they don't actually flee. They just kind of be like panicking, like, "Oh, we can't!" Like they can't control the objective. They can't do stuff like that. So for example, Tyranids actually have a thing where you can force battle shock tests or leadership checks across the board. So it's called battle shock test. But they have a thing where once per game, you could be like, every unit on the board's taking a battle shock test, and they're -1 to their test. So instead of on 8s, you have to do it on 9s, right? So it's kind of like they're mind warping you, and you're just like, bleh, right? So they have things like that. But there's different, I think Chaos Knights have something similar. In fact, Chaos Knights, it's really important because I played them the other week, where if somebody gets battle shocked and they're like, we're freaking out, they actually get bonuses against them. So they're like, we're +1 to hit against you now because you're freaked out. So they're just like, they get like empowered. So there's different bonuses that get impacted by these types of tests as well. Then when you look at the profile, it's a little different because you have ranged and melee here. 40k is a lot of range, but usually if you have multiple range weapons, it'll tell you can only choose between one of them, because 40k still has the thing where you pick your loadouts. So it'll be like, you can have 1 flesh borer, or you can have 1 Termagant spine fist and devour. So it like tells you what you can pick between.
Gotcha.
So it'll be like, you can have a rocket launcher, or you can have like a super blaster, or you can do this. So it has more customization. But as you can see, it's got like, for example, 1 attack, 4 ballistic skill, which is it's just the hit. You're just hitting. So you roll a dice, and then on a 4 you hit, and then it's strength 5. So unlike in Sigmar, where it's just like you wound on a 5, you go, okay, this gun is strength 5. What is your toughness? And then maybe a Space Marine is like toughness 5. So you go, okay, it's strength 5, toughness 5. That means it's 4s. So you're wounding on 4s now. And then if you have to figure out the table. It's like if you, this is the annoying part of 40k.
It does. It's sounding complicated already. Yeah.
So like if you have strength 5 and their toughness 7, then you're wounding on 5s because they're tougher than your weapons.
But if you have a toughness 3 and you have strength 5,
then you're wounding on 3s. In fact, you'd be wounding on 2s because if you're double or more their toughness, then you're on 2s. So you just have to remember the math formula, essentially.
Oh boy. Okay.
When you're playing this. So every time you shoot somebody in 40k, you go, I'm strength like 9, what's your toughness? And if they're like 14, they're like, all right, hitting on 5s. Or if you're like, I'm strength 5, what's your toughness? And they're like 13. It's like, all right, I'm hitting on like 6s now. So like, it all just depends. You have to constantly go back and forth with strength toughness. But after a while of playing, especially if you're playing the same armies, you kind of just remember stuff. So you're like, oh yeah, your toughness this, I'm strength. Then you just play faster. And then that's usually what happens. So they can be a lot. Like these games are definitely a lot to learn and remember, which is why it kind of is a steep learning. It's like learning a MOBA, like League of Legends or Dota or anything. Like you have to learn your army and what they do and their abilities and all the little like data sheets and war scrolls. Then you have to learn your opponent's army and what they do and all their abilities, so you know what's coming at you. And then you kind of just keep doing that and learning all the different armies and all different things. And then eventually you're like, hey, I know everything.
Sure.
And that's kind of what it becomes, but it is
and
a
that's
lot.
before tactics of where to place stuff versus an army. Like, you may know everything about the other army and your army, but now you have to know where to put things and how to move things in order to have the most beneficial turn you can have. And so it's like, all right, what's our strategy here now? So there's like different layers, plus also build outs. So it definitely can get complicated from the sound of it.
Oh yeah, because usually what happens is you'll set up the board and it has, especially in 40k, terrain's important because there's so much shooting that you need to hide your guys behind stuff or they're just going to get blasted. In Sigmar, it's not as bad. Shooting is usually just like chip shot damage to weaken people a bit before you charge in and fight. So it's not as impactful in Sigmar. But 40k, if you're just like, I'm going to leave my guy out in the open, he's probably dead. Like, he's just going to get blown up. So the setup of the board matters. Like, when you start placing units, you usually go back and forth. So like, you place one, they place one. You place one, they place one. So that's always impactful because then you're looking at like where your opponent's placing, for example, their anti-tank gun. And then you're like, well, I don't want to put my tank by their anti-tank gun. So you're like, I'm going to save my tank for last. So that way, whenever they put down their anti-tank, I'm going to put it like all the way over here, right? So there's kind of like a strategy element from the start of the game going back and forth. So for example, yesterday or 2 days ago, when I played my 40k game, I put my kill rig with the orcs, which is just a big squig pulling a orc thing. I thought I put it in cover, but it was not in cover, and then it just got blown up. And I was like, I don't know why I did that. That was real dumb. So it's just like, and a lot of times you don't realize it till it's too late, and it's just like, it's just one of those things you got to learn by playing the game. It also depends on the objectives and the type of map. That's kind of one of the ways they balance a lot of the stuff. Is some maps are like different objectives all over the place. So some will have 5 objectives on the board. Some will have 3 objectives on the board. Some will have like an objective way over here and one over here. So like there's different game types essentially with objectives, which is one of the ways they make it so not every game's going to be the same. And then there's secondary objectives on top of that, in 40k at least, where it'll be like get 4 units in all 4 quarters and you get bonus points, right? So it's like earning points on top of the main objectives.
And the winner is the one with the most points, is the vibe? Or is it you lose your army?
No, it's just the most points. You can have your army like completely wiped out and still win the game.
Okay, interesting.
So yeah, that's what a lot of that is. Now, old world fantasy is pretty much just deathmatch. Like if you lose your army in that, you're pretty much dead. Which fantasy, again, the book that I showed you, okay, this one, I had to learn Warhammer Old World last year because that's when they re-released it. It is like 200 pages of rules. It's like what I just talked about with 40k and Sigmar times 2. Like it is it's insane because like there's so many customizations with it too. It's almost like a role-playing game where you can give your Tomb King guy on a dragon, like you can give him armor, you can give him weapons, and each of these things cost points. So it's almost like you're playing like D&D or something. You're like, yeah, okay, I'm giving him this, I'm giving him the magic item, I'm giving him this staff. Like you can just deck him out and things for points. So a lot of people like that because you can like customize your army in different ways, and you can have the same army, but each person plays it to their own style. But usually, again, people just take the most overpowered items, and they're just like, I'm going to give them that because it's broken. And that's usually what that boils down to. Old world and fantasy has like so many different like they also have leadership, but the leadership is like more Total War-esque. So for example, when you're playing as Tomb Kings, okay, and you fight in Old World and you lose a certain amount of guys, that deducts points from your leadership check. So after you fought in combat, they're like, take a leadership check, and you roll. And let's say you roll like a 9 and your leadership is like 6. So you'd be like, all right, so you failed by like 3. So now you lose 3 guys because they're Tomb Kings. They just evaporate. So it's like I don't remember if it was like below or above. It's like if you roll badly, you deduct like the amount of models you've lost and the amount you failed the leadership check by, and then you lose models on top of that if you're Tomb Kings. So it's like they have an entirely different leadership system than 40K, where if you fail in 40K, you don't lose anybody. But in this, it's like you'll lose guys if you're Tomb King. Tomb King is kind of a bad example because that's like one specific army when everybody else is different. So like if you're a normal army, okay, for example, I was playing my friend. I was the Beastmen. All right, I was chopping away at him. He was the Empire, and I charged a Razor Gore into him, like a shitty Razor Gore, and it charged into his general. And so in Old World, when you lose combat or like you're forced to take a leadership check, if you fail it, you have to run away. That's their so it's like Total War. So he pretty much had to roll anything except an 11 or a 12 to succeed, and he rolled an 11 or a 12 because usually you want to roll low on your leadership in that game. And so he rolled a 12, so his general had to turn around and then roll like 2d6 to flee a certain amount. And so he fled. But in that game, when you flee and you run into another unit, that unit gets scared because the other guy's scared. So his general fled into his wizard, and then his wizard fled off the board. So his wizard died essentially just from like this entire thing. So it became our like meme because we had like a tiny ass Razor Gore pig charge his like one of his most impactful units, and it flew away and like scared his wizard to running off the board.
Awesome.
So it's cool in that aspect because you get a lot of these like crazy elements that happen and like wacky stories, and you can like kind of imagine it in your head, like, dude, he's like fleeing and he's like, get out of here, there's a pig, and he's like, holy shit, and he like flees and the pig's just like running after him. It's fun like that, but again, you have to remember so many rules in that game that it's like it's a lot.
I have to imagine that not only are you memorizing rules and doing all the painting and setting up tactical positioning and stuff, but the boards themselves, that's a whole other thing. Now, are you creating those? Do you guys have like a table that has cool models on it? Or can it just be a sheet of paper that's like, these are the objectives? Or how does the actual battlefield look or come together?
So usually in the rule book, they give you like the standard board size, which is usually like 4x6 or something. I don't remember the exact thing. It's like whatever, right? It's like 48 inches and then 64. I think it's 4x6. But usually when we play, we also do 2v2s. So we slightly extend the board out. So my friend just has like a big area in his basement, and he just has like a dining room table, and then he puts giant planks of wood on it. And then we lay out these like mats that have a bunch of nature stuff on them.
Okay.
And so we essentially do that. And then when you figure out your game type, that's when you can put the objectives down, which we also usually use like these little mat things that are like little objective markers. It'll be like a stone circle or something. And you just put that down where the card tells you to. So you pre-measure it all out and make sure it's all like balanced accordingly.
Okay, but so it doesn't have to be like the things you see in videos online or at major tournaments where a model builder has clearly built a beautiful castle ruin and a forest, and that's not something you're ever doing.
No, like we got some decent terrain that makes it kind of cool, but we don't got like waterfall rivers and like crazy stuff like that. Like it's just like a couple pieces of terrain here and there for Sigmar. And then 40K, we have like a bunch of ruins, like old buildings and like metal structures, and you're just like, this block's here, and you just put that down. But we don't have like an intricate gaming table that the Wizard of Terrain has crafted in his lair.
Right. The Wizard's busy. He's got stuff to do. He's getting paid by the tournaments. He doesn't have time for you guys.
He's making a bunch of money, dude. Yeah. He's making bank.
So you have all these units, and you've crafted all these armies, and you've painted all those things on your shelf. Can any of them be swapped? So, for example, did anything you make for fantasy have any use in 40K? Or do you have to buy a whole other set of armies and units to play in that other setting?
So some armies do transcend their universe and go into other ones. So, for example, the Beastmen were in Sigmar, and then they brought them back in Old World, and now they're kind of discontinuing them in Sigmar, and they're only in Old World. So a lot of people are like rebasing their Beastmen for the Old World. Some armies like have the ability to be built for either one. The issue with Old World and Sigmar is Sigmar uses circular bases, and Old World uses square bases, like the old ass square ones, because when in Old World fantasy it's more like rank and flank, where they stand next to each other in a line and they all move around on like little trays, like and they move in like like
Okay.
they move in straight lines.
Sure.
But in Sigmar and 40k, they're on circular bases and they move in like any direction. It's just as long as it's like 6 inches, you go this way, you go that way, you go wherever. Like some units fly, so they can like fly on top of terrain, they can fly over terrain. So you can just measure through the terrain like that. So there's different ways of moving around. But one good example is in Sigmar and 40k, you can play Chaos Demons. So in Sigmar, like if you have an entire Nurgle army, you can play that same army in 40k, but you might need some more stuff, like usually other Chaos factions, like some Tzeentch stuff or some like whatever you want mixed in. But in Sigmar, usually you play one specific Chaos faction. There's no like Chaos Demons. It's just they're all their own thing.
Right. So you wouldn't be able to bring Chaos Knights into 40k, but you could bring the demons and then get some Chaos Marines if that was your vibe.
Well, you would play Chaos Knights in 40. Well, terminology, because Chaos Knights.
I'm thinking Chaos Knights, dudes on horses with lances, and they just look cool, versus guys who are in space battle armor with tentacles coming out of them.
Well, it's terminology, because Chaos Knights in 40k are the mechs, like the big Chaos Knight mech guys. They're not the Night Knights, like the Sigmar one.
So you couldn't bring those dudes into fantasy.
No. I mean, you could invent your own rules and do it if you really want.
Sure.
In fact, you can actually play the Chaos Knight mech guys and then ally in up to 500 points of Chaos Demons. So like when I played Chaos Knights, I brought in a Great Unclean One and like a Beast of Nurgle and some Nurglings. So like I already had those for Sigmar, and I'm like, cool, I can just like bring those in. So it's like a way to fill out your army and like add some different elements to it, because they can also deep strike, which is a mechanic where they don't start on the board. The units start off the board and then they arrive as like a reinforcement later in the game.
Other than Chaos, there's no other crossover. You're not bringing guys from the Empire into the Empire of Man. You're not, there's no Skaven in 40k, for example, so you can't bring a bunch of rat men into space. Orcs are different. So really, for the most part, it's just Chaos and only some Chaos units.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty limited, but it is there if you really wanted to.
So you really just have to like pick your poison in this. Like, do you like 40k? Do you like Age of Sigmar or fantasy?
Yeah. So like for 40k, I have Necron, Orc, Tyrannid, Chaos Knight, and that's it. I have nothing else. Pretty much 3/4 of the other armies are just Space Marines anyway. So, but in Sigmar, I have like, let's see, I've got Sylvaneth, which is like Wood Elves advanced, Seraphon, which is Lizard Men, Lumineth, which is like cool elemental elves. Normally, I don't even like elves, but I like the Lumineth because they got big cow men and they're big cows.
What?
Yeah, they got big cow.
Okay, they got big cowmen. Yeah.
Yep.
Not bulls, cowmen.
Yeah, and they have little elf guys that got cow hats to worship the cowmen because they're like the gods or something.
Of course.
They got like weird kangaroo riders and shit. They got some weird stuff. So I'm like, yo, I like that.
I get why you like them. Yeah.
There's Deepkin, which are like the sea elves, and I love them because they just got a bunch of like eels. They got a big turtle, like a massive turtle they ride on. It's pretty sick. They've also got let's see, Death is like the Ossiarch Bone Reapers. That's like skeleton. It's essentially Roman skeletons. So they're kind of cool. There's Night Haunt, which is like ghosts. I like them. Flesh Eater Courts are like delusional zombie people that think they're knights, but they're zombie guys, from what I understand is their lore. Soulblight is like vampire skeletons. I don't have them, but they're cool. And then you got Destruction Armies, which is like your Gits, your goblins. Okay, they got some wacky stuff. I love them. I have a lot of Gloomspite Gits. You got the Ogres. You got the Auric War Clans, which is split between the Iron Jaws, the Cruel Boys, and then they used to have the Bone Splitters, but they were too old, and so they gave them the old, like, get the fantasy, get out of here. And then the Sons of Behemat, which is just giants. So the Sons of Behemat are really good if you just want low models that are wacky and big, because each one of those models is like 700 points or like 600 points.
Damn. Okay.
You just got big ass giants. You take like 3 giants and that's your army. And they just walk around. It has its good and bad parts, as you could imagine. And then Chaos in Sigmar, you've got Khorne, which I don't really like Khorne. I'm not a Blood God person, all right? Every time I play against Khorne, they're annoying. Tzeentch is cool. I got Tzeentch. There's Slaanesh. I actually don't have Slaanesh. Nurgle, I got a lot of Nurgle. Skaven, and then Slaves to Darkness, which is like Chaos Knights that you know, and like the what's his name? Archeon. And all that. So there he is.
In his box, still unopened after all these years.
That's pretty much all the armies for Sigmar. Well, there's some more humans I don't care about, like Cities of Sigmar. There's whatever.
You really don't like any of the human factions. You're like,
no.
40k Sigmar, not a fan.
Even in just fantasy, like even World of Warcraft, I'm like, humans, like, boring. I don't know. Like if I'm playing a fantasy game, I want to play like the cool, crazy races and stuff like that. Like, sure. I don't want to play humans. I get why people want to play humans or like human-esque things, but it's just not for me.
I think it says a lot about you that when people play a fantasy game, they play like their picture-perfect version of themselves. And they're like, I'm a beautiful human warrior. And you're like, I'm Grorkus, the orc shaman, and I spew venom from my butt and lasers from my eyes. And I'm like, yeah, all right, I like that guy.
Who doesn't? So after you've built your army, right, with all this different stuff, you put the points together. The other big thing is I always tell people, if they try to build a meta army, it's not worth doing unless you're like a tournament person that has access to like constant armies, because much like any game, it gets balanced every couple of months. So they'll be like, this army's doing great, nerf them. So they increase the points cost on certain things. They'll change rules. They'll be like, hey, you know what? They got 10-inch move, put them down to 5. Like, screw them. They're moving too fast. Like, they'll just do shit like that. And then the people will be like, they ruined my units. They ruined my unit, right? People freak out. Or like, they nerfed my army. I paid thousands for this army, and now they've ruined it. I'm quitting. Like, you get plenty of that. So that's why just play what you enjoy. Like, people call it the rule of cool, which is like, just buy and paint and play what you think is cool. And then after that, you can, branch out into whatever else you want to do.
Well, based off of that, then, what would you say is the play style of the different armies?
So, for example, Lizardmen, or Seraphon in this case, are really nice because they can kind of do everything depending on how you want to build them. Some armies have more options than others. They got Croxigors, which are like big, hard-hitting, tanky dudes. They got the Agrodon Lancers, which are like Saurus warriors on little dinosaur raptor guys. They got Skinks on little dinosaur guys. They got normal Skinks. You got your Slan and Lord Croak, which are just like casting magic, which currently in the game is busted. Like, magic is... You can summon spells that don't go away that have they're called endless spells, and a wizard can summon an endless spell as part of its cast, and then it just is on the board as a unit, and it's treated as a unit, and people will just summon all these endless spells and just send them at people to like clog them up or get in the way or just make people have to deal with it, and it's just busted right now. So if you're a heavy magic faction that's like, I'm Lord Croak, I can cast 4 spells. He can just be like, here's an endless spell, here's an endless spell, here's an endless spell, here's an endless spell. And then he's just like, and I'll do my normal magic next turn. So like, but if you're like a army that only has 1 wizard guy, it's like, I cast 1 spell. So it's like, he can do it, but that's that. So that's kind of busted. But that's, they can do a little bit of everything. Certain armies can only do they're kind of limited. So for example, Nurgle, Nurgle is very much a tanky, wear you down over the game faction. So they have slow moving units that are just tanky as shit, and they just try to get onto the objective, get where they want to go, and then just like sit there and be like, come get me, idiot. So one example of this is their army trait, I thought it used to be cooler, was when you would get next to them, they would disease you. And every time they would hit you with like a 6, or every time you were standing next to them during a certain phase, they would rack up the disease counter. So you would always be at 1 at the start of every turn, and then it would go up. And it would just keep going up to a max of 7. And then at the end of the turn, you'd be like, you got a 7 on your guy right there. So you would roll 7 dice, and on every like 3 or 4 up, depending, they would suffer mortal wounds, which are wounds that you just can't save. So they would just get like just killed.
Interesting.
It would just wear them down. It was annoying. And then you would try to fight back against Nurgle. And not only do they have normal saves, like they save on like a 3-up. So if you're like, okay, I got 1 rend, so you're saving on 4-ups. And they're like, oh, I saved half of them. But they also have this thing called Feel No Pain, which is like a ward save, which is a bonus save that you get on top of your save. So it's kind of like a shield, or like an extra bit of tankiness.
So you just get to roll again, just in case.
Yeah, so, but this one's specifically for the damage that you've taken. So let's say somebody was hitting you, and they're like, I did 5 attacks, and 3 of them hit, okay? And 3 of them wounded, and it's like 2 damage each, all right? And you try to save them, and you save none of them. So it's like, okay, you take 6 damage. So you would roll 6 dice. You roll a dice for each damage, and for every like 5 up, you block that damage. So it's just like a bonus save. So there's been times where like my friend will be like trying to take out my Nurgle, and I'm like, oh man, I only saved like a couple. He's like, all right, that's 7 damage. I would roll like 6 5-ups. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'll take 1. And then the next turn, I'm like, he heals. He's back to full. And, it's just like and it can drive people insane. So that's why I love Nurgle. I would also really annoy people because I'd go disease every time they'd get diseased. And then one time he kept rolling terribly, and I just kept diseasing him. And I was like, disease. And he was like, shut the fuck up. So you can really get in people's heads. Depending on what you're playing with. For example, Skaven can kind of be swingy, as you would imagine. Skaven have so many different units and ways to play, but one of the most annoying ways you can play is Scryer, where you just shoot everything. So the Warp Lightning Cannon is one of the only shooting things in the game currently that does mortal wounds when it shoots. So you just bypass all the saving and just do straight up damage to them. And the only way you can block that is like having that ward, that special like Feel No Pain ward save. So it is it's okay. So when you roll this thing, you can roll a d6 to determine how many attacks you get, or you can overpower it and roll like 2d6, and then you get actually I think that's how it used to work. They changed it now where it's like getting a certain amount. I don't know. Either way, you're rolling a random amount of dice, and Skaven generally have a thing where you can overpower it and either hurt yourself or do more damage. And everybody always overpowers it. There's like, you have to do it. And so what you would do is like you roll all these dice, and for every 1 that you roll, you take damage yourself. You take mortal wounds. And so it's possible that you just roll terribly and you roll like 4 of them and you get a bunch of damage. You just blow up turn 1. And you're just like, well, that sucked. But sometimes you high roll it and you barely roll any 1s, and then you do a bunch of damage to them, and you're just like, yeah. So it's very Skaven-y, where you can just you get very random amounts of damage that either blow yourself up or blow somebody else up.
Okay, what would you say are the most random armies of that nature? Like, if you're gonna play a game and just do it for silly goofs, rather than I have formed a perfect army and I spent $1,000 on credit. Like, what are the armies where it's like, screw it, we're here to have fun, we're gonna be goofy, let's get crazy with it?
Skaven, Gloomspite Gits. The Gits are very much just goofy ass, especially depending on the units you bring. They've got like the squigs, so like they got squig hoppers, which are just squigs that hop around on these or goblins riding on squigs. And then if they survive battle, they actually graduate to being Boingrot Bounders, which are just the same thing, but they wear knight armor.
Well, of course
so
they
become like squig knight goblins. And so the big thing with a lot of the Git stuff is they get random movement. So they'll be like, you roll, like you would move 6 plus d6 or something like that, right? So you move 6 and then you roll a dice to see how much more you move, because sometimes you'll roll a 1 and it's like you only move 7 because your squig is like, I ain't moving. So they're like, ah. And then sometimes you roll a 6. So they're like, whoa. And they're like, really, the squig's like running fast and stuff like that. Let's see. What else is a wacky army? There's actually not a large amount of wacky armies. There's certain armies that can be wacky, like Skaven and Gloomspite gets, but there's not a whole bunch of like actual like goof armies.
What's the deal with orcs then? Are orcs goofy, or what's the deal with them?
So you have the Iron Jaws. They're more of a tanky armored orc. They're not really goofy per se. They hit hard, and that's what they do. Like, you can once per game. They might have changed it recently, I think, because they were just really bad, and so they had to like buff their wah. You would be able to wah and then get these bonuses where it's like, now you're +1 to hit, you're +1 to your attack, you're like, you get so many bonuses because they're like, wah, right? So they're really fun for that. In 40k, it's the same thing. They also get a wah, and then they get +1 to attack, +1 to their strength. So normally if they're hitting on like 7s, now they're strength 8, so they can just hit harder. They can advance and charge, which I need to break the phases down for you, all right?
Yeah, we did skip over this. We skipped the phases, I pushed you along.
Which is very important. But that's kind of the way, this is how people get sucked into all of this, right? Because you have your army, and you're like, this is so fun. And then you start reading about all the other armies once you start understanding it. And you're like, dude, if I play this army, this would be really cool if I ran these guys. And then I like buff them with this guy. And like I put it, and it's like you start kind of doing all this stuff and army building in your head. And then you go down the rabbit hole, and then you start spending money on all this stuff. And then it's just stacked up in the corner, and you're like, ah.
Yep.
So the phases, all right? This is very important because this is how you play the game. This is how you actually play the game.
We're finally getting here. Okay, yes.
So each game has their own set of phases per turn. And usually you go back and forth, taking turns. But in Sigmar, it can vary because they actually have you roll off against each other, which some people hate, some people like. So in 40k, for example, you have 5 phases. All right. Step 1 is the command phase. That is where both of you just do your like essentially your buffs or like just little things that you declare. It's like kind of a whatever phase, but it's still important. It's just being like, this guy does this, whatever. You get command points, which are things that you can spend on essentially like bonus actions. So they're called stratagems in 40k, and then in Sigmar they're called commands or command points, and you can do they're bonus abilities that cost points because they're stronger. So that's kind of the best way to describe it. Movement phase is number 2. That's where you move. So you move your entire army. It's important to note that in the movement phase, you have the ability to run. So you can be like, or I guess advance in 40k is what it's called. It's all just the same, but different terminology. So you would roll a d6 and they can move an extra d6 amount. But usually if they advance, they cannot shoot.
Okay.
So you're like, do I want to do the trade-off here of like getting, maybe they're like 10 inches away from an objective and you're like 8-inch move. So you're like, I just got to run to get onto the objective because that's what I got to do, right? So you're like, it's worth running them to get it there. However, there are abilities where you can have a unit have, say, assault, which means that you are able to advance and charge because they have assault weapons. So you're like, oh, they can just run every turn and shoot. So like, it's actually easier in Sigmar because they've changed the wording to just be like, this unit has run and shoot. And you're like, oh, cool.
Sure.
So while in 40k and stuff, they still have like fun terminology of like, it's got assault, it's got devastating wounds, which is essentially just like crit mortal wounds on your thing. And then in Sigmar, it's like, yeah, it's got crit mortal wounds.
So going back to the termagants that you showed, they have 2 abilities that have assault listed next to it.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be, you can move, and then you have 18 inches of range to fire your flesh borer, for example.
Correct. So they could move and run or advance on top of that. So they'd be able to move 6 and then roll a d6 to move an additional amount of movement and still be able to shoot their gun because they have that.
Okay.
But if they didn't have assault, they wouldn't be able to do that. So then there's, if you see on the one below it, there's twin linked. All that twin linked means is that you can re-roll your wound rolls, which again, you have to learn all this terminology. So once you learn it, you're like, oh yeah, twin linked. I know that. That just lets me reroll my wound rolls. Because then there's other things that are like reroll your hit rolls, reroll there's a lot of rerolls as bonuses. If you're trying to kill something and then they get to reroll stuff, it gets annoying. There used to be so many rerolls in 40K and Sigmar. It would like drive me insane. So anyway, that's the movement phase. Okay, you got the movement phase. You're moving around doing that. Then you have the shooting phase. It's where you shoot. Then you have the charge phase. The charge phase is where you can charge a unit into an enemy unit, and you have to be within 12 inches typically. And you roll 2 dice, and if you roll the distance between you and that unit, you are allowed to move him like into combat. So that's how you get units into melee combat, is in the charge phase. So
right.
if you're like a big monster and you want to get into combat and you get like 5 inches away from something and it's the charge phase, you roll your 2 dice, and if you roll a 5 or higher, you have gotten into combat. So that's how that works. There's different things that can happen. People can get like +1 to charge, so they're like, I'm 5 away, but now I'm +1 to charge, so I'm getting it on 4s. Or there's like, you have redeploy, so somebody might get close to you and then you can use a command point to like move your guys D6 away. So they might be like, I'm going to try to charge you with my monster. And then you redeploy and you're like, I roll a 6, and they move 6 back. So now they were in a 3-inch charge. Now it's a 9. So you've made it harder. So there's like little abilities and stuff you can do that can play into strategy.
And you can do that. Do you have to declare that in the command phase that you're going to do that? Or can you do that right before they charge?
You can do that right before they charge. Well, it depends, because I don't believe 40K has anything like that. So this is where it gets like crazy, because you have to remember each game. Because there's times where I'm playing 40K in Sigmar, I'm like, I'm gonna do this thing, and then they're like, wait, you can't do that. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a Sigmar thing, I remember. And then you're like, oh wait, that's a fantasy thing. So it's like you have to play enough to where you can kind of decipher between all the games. For example, one rule is that in Sigmar, when you're moving, you cannot get within 3 inches of a unit in the move phase, but you can charge once you're there. So like if you're trying to get near somebody, your model can't get within 3 inches. It's like an aura around it. And so you're like, you always have to roll a 3 on your charge roll to get into combat. But in 40K, you can get within an inch of the model, and then you're pretty much just always going to make it into combat.
Interesting.
There's different little things you have to remember here and there. So once you charge in, then in 40K, all of the units that charge get to fight first. So if you charge with like various different units, all of them would fight first, and then all of the other combats would happen. So like, for example, if you are in round 3 and last turn you charged in with something and it didn't kill the thing it was in combat with, that would happen last in the order of operations. So you would fight with everything that charged, then you would start on the combats that aren't finished from the previous turn, and then that would happen. So that's the fight phase. So that's where you all fight each other. And so those are the main phases. There's a lot of other stuff that happens, like piling in and just little details and stuff, but that's kind of the basic understanding of all of it. Because in Sigmar, it's a little different, because you have the phases, but there's also kind of like some extra phases. So for example, Sigmar phases, all right, there's the hero phase, which is the command phase essentially, but you're usually doing more in Sigmar in the hero phase because that's where you cast magic.
Right.
So since 40K doesn't really have a lot of magic in it, they don't really do that much. But in Sigmar, you're casting spells, you're doing a lot of like other things. So it's like the hero phase is actually more impactful. Then you do movement, then you do shooting, then you do charging, and then you do combat. And then that's it. So it's kind of similar, but like it's one of those things where you'd have to kind of play it to really pick it up.
Now, there is a question I have that I'm sure many people watching have, which is, you have mentioned all the dice rolls for this, and this, and if it's one guy, he may roll 2 dice, but if you have a huge army of those guys, they may roll more. How many dice do you actually need to play this? Because to me, it sounds like, and having witnessed a video of 2 guys playing, they just dumped like 80 dice into a bin and then had to count them out and try to... It seems like it's a lot.
You do need quite a bit of dice. It also kind of depends on the army that you're playing. For example, if you're playing 40K, some guns are just like, they got like 1 billion attacks, and the gun's gonna like shoot like, because you'll have like a bunch of different guys, and each one of those guys has like 5 attacks each, and then you're like, well, I gotta roll for all these guys, right? And that's just like, it's a lot. Usually guns that have that many attacks are really shitty guns. for the most part. Usually the guns you want to be shooting don't have as many attacks. It kind of just depends. But Sigmar is usually better with that. Well, I say that, but if you have like 40 clan rats, you're rolling like 82 dice. I believe you get +1 dice for your champion in the unit for the attack.
That's so much. And then you have to count them out and then figure out what of those hit and what of those don't and what may hurt you. And like how?
Yeah. So like you're rolling the 82 dice. And if you're hitting on 4s, on average, like 41 of those dice are gonna hit. But you have to like be like, did I roll that? And then after that, you're rolling the wound with those dice, and then they have to roll the save roll of those dice. But even then, sometimes people will just, if it's like a group of like shitty units and somebody charges in their like big hard hitting stuff, they'll just like pick it up, be like, it's dead, dude. Like, don't even roll it. Like, whatever.
Okay.
Just to save time. Some people also will just, if they only have like 20 dice, they'll just roll it like 4 times. It just takes longer, so it's easier to have more dice. You're gonna roll a lot of dice.
So taking into account all the dice, plus
Right.
units, plus paints if you're going to paint, what would you say the average cost of an army? Basic, nothing fancy, just an average army of 2,000 points. What would that cost, including dice, paints, etc.?
For 2,000 points, it's probably gonna be with the paints and everything, it's probably around 1,000.
Damn. So this isn't just like a hobby. This is a hobby.
It is a hobby. That's why they call it, you know, the plastic crack, the jokes about your money and your wallet. You know, it's like it's pricey.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that if I sold off all this, I could probably buy a car or something. But I'm not gonna do that. It's a lot. Like even those big models, like the Archeon. That Archeon, I think, is like up to 190 now.
Yeah, when this was sent to me, it was $160, and I was scared to paint it. I did not want to ruin this, and I still don't. I'm still terrified of ruining this. Instead, I went out and I bought the cheap, like Slam Bro guys who are
Yeah.
ultra cheap. I don't know if they really serve a purpose. They may be illegal now because they definitely have units that seem old and weird. I'm like, I'm just going to learn to paint on them and do that. And that's been very fun. I've enjoyed that a great deal.
Yeah. It's one of those things where when you start playing the game, you'll play with what you have, and then you'll be like, oh, but man, I see these guys are really good. I'm going to add that to my army. And then you go buy and build that and paint that. And then you're like, but if I had just like 3 more of these Croxigors, then I'd have 6 Croxigors. They'd like be a really good unit. And you go do that. And you're like, oh, but man, I need to add in like some skinks or something. Like we need screening for my slant. I'll just get some skinks. And then before you know it, you're here. Now, I will say, I'm lucky that I'm part of the Games Workshop Cool Kid Creator program. So they just send me stuff. So
You had to work your way up to that, though. Let's be real. You definitely spent some money.
Up to that. Yeah, I definitely spent some money, without a doubt. But now I'm on the list where if something comes out that's new for my factions that I've told them I care about, so I don't get any Space Marine stuff, they just send it to me and they're like, here's the NDA date, build it, show it off, knock yourself out, right? So I'm part of that program. So that saves me a lot of money. However, sometimes, like I said, sometimes they'll send me like 3 Croxigors, and I'm like, well, I need 3 more for what I want to do. So then I go buy 3 more Croxigors.
All right, so you have a significant amount of armies behind you. You've got a whole, people don't know this, but to your side there, you can kind of see beyond that plant.
Oh yeah, this
A tower of paints with multiple cameras that point different angles, so he can just paint. And he has a whole little table thing. It's pretty impressive. But behind you, you have your wall of really, I don't know if it's important, but things that are important to you. What are your favorite units that you have made so far? What are the ones you're like, I love this guy?
on this wall.
Yeah.
Here we go. I got this guy, the new rat priest. He's pretty neat, right? The rat priest.
Ooh, I like that guy. The horns are cool as hell.
Yeah, he's got the cool horns.
Also,
there.
good paint job, dude. That guy looks awesome.
Yeah, thank you. This is I painted him not too long ago. He's pretty fun to paint. Even just the basing, I tried. It's like sewer ground. It's kind of like radiating up. So he's pretty neat. I like him. We also got, let's see, my orc boss. People call him the cabbage.
Why do they call him
see
the
there.
cabbage?
Well, he's shaped like a cabbage.
Okay, sure.
So he's a mega boss on Maw Crusher. All right. And he's literally a orc boss riding on a big dragon guy. And so he hits very hard. I built like the terrain down here, like he's in the desert.
How long did that all take to put together? Because it looks like you painted the spines individually and you did all sorts of stuff. What was the process there?
So this guy, I actually painted like day by day. I would be like, today I'm going to paint this. And then I'd be like, today I'm going to paint this. And you just like go through and just slowly paint. And then over the course of weeks, you're like, dude, he's coming together.
Okay. Yeah.
That's pretty great. Right? So that's one of the easiest ways to do stuff. Let's see. I got my Lord Croak. All right. Here's Lord Croak. Comes off. You got his like chair. You can put him back on. And he's just sitting up there. It's actually a really cool model. They remade Lord Croak. Old Lord Croak looked like ass. So they redid it. You got like vines and stuff back there. It's a pretty fun one.
Some of the accoutrement, the things that are on him, are really cool looking. Yeah. It's why I like the various wraiths and things they have, because those dudes have like shit hanging off of them and chains and stuff, and it looks really cool. Especially when you go to the website and you see the professionally painted models, and you're like, wow, if only I could paint.
Yeah, no, they've gotten a lot better with their model details over the years. Some of the old ones are just like nothing. And now they've gotten to the point there's like too much detail on some of them. Here's my Carnosaur. This is the first model. He's the one I talked about. I built in that starter box. And then since then, I've kind of tweaked them up a bit. But he is pretty fun. Also, his spear broke off. I don't know where it went. So
Rip spear.
Spear's gone.
Yeah.
But, did some like rocks and grass down there.
That's super interesting. In my mind, I thought the Carnosaur would be a giant T-Rex kind of guy.
Well, it is kind of a T-Rex.
Yeah, but he looks like he could go around on all fours, which, it's a different vibe.
Oh, yeah, I guess he can.
He's got kind of raptor claw things going on.
Yeah, he's got his little like talons, right? So he's the old blood, okay? He's got the, you can kind of see it, the gauntlet. It's like a little Mega Man gauntlet he's got like right here.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, it did it. It focused in.
Almost focused for a minute.
Yep, you see it?
Yeah, it's on his arm and his claws are, yeah.
Right, so that's the old blood. But now, here's the Scar Veteran. So see, he doesn't have the gauntlet. He's just got a shield and a spear.
Gotcha.
His spear's intact. It hasn't broken. And so he's also purple.
Right. I mean, they're different. They're from different families. They have different backgrounds. Yeah.
I like making them different colors too, because you can be like, oh yeah, the purple one's this guy, so you remember easier instead of being like, which one's which? So yeah, I like him. He's pretty cool. I do have my. Hold on, where is he? Here's a Nurgle guy for you. He's one of the Blight Lords. He's vomiting up.
Yeah, now that's my guy.
Yeah, so he's pretty neat. He's got like flies or some shit coming off of him. I don't even know. So you have different base sizes as well, as you can see. Like here's that one. You got this one. Like they're all different sizes. That also plays a role. You need to have like correct base sizes for when you're playing the game specifically. If you're not playing the game, then whatever, you can put it on whatever you want. Let's see. I also got we got Bugman.
Who?
Right, we got Bugman. He's not actually a bug. He's a wood elf Sylvaneth guy.
But he's on a bug.
He's riding on this big bug. Yeah, he's like a tree dude.
Oh, that's cool.
See?
Oh, he has got his little horn. That's neat.
Yeah. So he's pretty cool. I did like a wintry forest type of thing down there.
Now, do you paint the base first, or do you do the base last after you've painted the whole model? And when do you put the model onto the base?
I usually do the base last because you're gonna like paint the guy and you're just like, you're gonna get like paint all over here and it's gonna mess stuff up if it's already based. So
sure.
if you're finished painting him, then you can just like put it all on. Plus, if you get like mud and stuff on his feet or something, it adds like a little element of realism.
Okay.
Like he's been in the mud. There's also I just finished this troll guy a bit ago. It's pretty fun. The troll. He's in the Gloomspite Gits. He's just the Trog the troll.
Can you put a guy on top of him, or is it just him by himself with some cool stuff on him?
I think it's just him, and then this is just like, I don't know if it's growing on his back or what it is, but he's just a big ass troll with a thing on his back, and he's got his like ass crack hanging out.
As they do.
So yeah, I actually have quite a bit of like painted stuff. Hold on.
What is
I'll
your
give
biggest?
you-
What is the biggest thing you have? You know how sometimes there are those like, this is the Excelsior class Star Destroyer. Like, what is the thing you have?
Let's see. The Stomp was my biggest, but I actually think it's in my car. But the second biggest is this guy.
Oh no. Oh no.
This is one of the Chaos Knights, the Tyrant. You can see.
Yes. He has so many guns. So many guns.
They can like move and stuff. Like, ee-oo, ee-oo. Right? They got their, usually some of them have stuff that get like these guns move. They actually got a lot of movable bits.
Do you have a comparison of this guy to, say, a normal 40k unit? Like a standard either corpsman? You know what corpsman, or like a marine or something?
I can give you, let's see, what do I got? I got something here.
Or a standard chaos marine or chaos unit.
Hold on. I'll give you the first comparison. This is a skink.
Okay.
The skink priest. All right. So
I love that.
compared to
That's
that.
great. Okay. That's very funny.
So then, I also got, all right, this is the Nurgle Glotkin. All right.
Love
It's
that
got,
guy.
Like, the guys up top. I haven't fully painted him, but I got the main dude started. So they're kind of similar size. All right. Then you've got the, here's the Gargants. Hold on, let me get the Gargant out here. This is the Kraken Eater Gargant. All right. So he's one of the armies, the Sons of Behemat, where you can play like 3 of them. Because they're just like giants. So the big models are pretty fun. But then you have like the tiny ass, like, hold on. I'll give you a Zinch here. All right. Since you like the Zinch.
I love a Zinch.
Let's see. What's good? Here's a Flamer of Zinch. I think this is an Exalted Flamer, right? So he's not painted, but you can see he's primed up. So if you compare him, like this guy, all right, you can see he's actually decently sized. That's what she said. And then you got the, you compare him to that, he's still like, he's gonna get stomped on.
Right.
Most of his stuff is just the stuff he's spitting out. Right? His flame.
The flamer. Yeah, the flame of the flamer part. Yeah.
I could probably go on here for over an hour showing my things, but
yeah, no, I just wanted to see what you were kind of playing with because you were talking about all the different things you're doing, and I was like, okay, tell me, show me those things, and you did. That was really impressive. That's a lot. You clearly have a lot of units.
Yeah, the other one I'm working on, I just built for the Chaos Knights. This is my favorite one. It's the Abomination.
Yo, that
He's
guy
got
is
the Dr.
robot
Octopus.
tentacles.
Yeah, and they spin around and stuff. He's got vultures on top. I love this guy.
Yeah, that guy's cool. I like that guy a lot. Crendor, are you dabbling in chaos? Is this happening right now?
I got a lot of chaos. I got Nurgle, I got Zinch, I got Skaven are part of chaos now. For
I like that. You know what? I like that about you. That's good times.
Yeah. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's my main things. Let's see. One big element that's important in both games is that how damage is allocated. So for example, when you shoot somebody in 40k and you do like 50 damage in one shot, or like you go insane, it could be like 8,000 damage.
Okay.
You're only going to kill one model in a unit. Like the damage doesn't spill over to the other models.
Gotcha. So if you have a group of units, 20, and you kill 8,000 worth of damage, you only kill one guy, but very much kill him.
Yeah, if you're using like one big blaster gun and it's got like one attack, 20 damage, it's only going to kill one guy. Like it's not going to spill out in everybody. That guy just gets like evaporated. He's just gone.
Right.
But in Sigmar, if you do like 20 damage, it actually spills out into the rest of the units. You can actually do damage to everybody. So that's like one big rule that people that swap from game to game get wrong too, because they'll be like, I did my one attack for 10 damage, and then they don't realize in Sigmar it spills over, or vice versa.
So if you are doing 40k, for example, are there any attacks that have a signifier that says this is an AoE attack, so you will hit other guys?
You can usually figure it out. Like 40k is a thing called blast. So blast weapons are you get your normal amount of attacks plus blast, which is 1 attack per 5 models in the unit you're shooting. So if they have a group of 20 guys, you would get 4 bonus attacks on top of your normal attacks.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so that's like an AoE weapon because it's like blasting. It's like a big blast weapon. And you can't shoot blast weapons in close range because it's like...
It would hurt you too.
Yeah, it's like an artillery type of weapon.
And so there's never going to be a moment where you roll 1 die, it does damage, but that damage hits everyone. No matter what, you're rolling... Like, if I'm going to do an AoE, I have to roll for every single attack that AoE would hit.
There might be some instances. Sometimes there's like special stuff that can, but for the most part, no.
And what about the magic? So if you put down a magic spell and it's a huge area thing, if you're in the area, you just have to roll, and like the magic just does a certain amount of damage if it hits you, or how does that work?
40k doesn't really have magic. They used to have the Psyker phase, and then they just got rid of it, which was essentially the magic phase, and now they just have like units with the Psyker keyword, and usually it's just terrible and hurts you more than it benefits you, so it's dumb.
Okay.
So in Sigmar, you get your magic, and you can be like, I have a spell that pick a unit within 24 inches, and you roll a dice for every model in the unit, and on a 4-up, they take a mortal wound. So it's like a way of like blowing up units. So it's like a big AoE spell. So like the Slan will have something like that, or Lord Croak, where he's just like, and he just like blows up the unit. I
like your interpretation of a giant fat frog.
So yeah, there's different types of spells like that. There's like buff spells where you can be like, I'm giving this unit +1 to save, or like I'm giving this unit +1 to their rend. Like they coded their weapons in magic, and now it pierce harder, stuff like that. Warhammer Fantasy, it makes magic kind of insane, but also fun in a way, because they have it so the magic can happen in every phase. So like in the movement phase, you do movement magic. In the like the shooting phase, you do your like magic missiles and shooting magic. So a lot of people actually wanted that to go into Sigmar because they thought it was cool, and then they just didn't do it, so it's not there. They did add an element where you can do magic in your opponent's phase, which was new. You have to spend the command point, which I mentioned earlier. A lot of command points you just generate over the course of the game, and then you can spend those to do like your cool abilities, essentially. So for example, you can cast your spells in your opponent's hero phase. So you could be like, oh, I see you've got your big block of guys right there, and now I'm going to cast my magic in your phase and try to blow them up again. So you get like more casting. The only downside is you get -1 to your cast because it's like not in your thing. But
sure, if
you're Lord Croak, you're like +3 to cast or some shit anyway, so it doesn't even matter. So like different characters have different bonuses. Like some wizards are like +1 to your cast, some are +2 to cast. Like, and then you have like what's his name, the big skeleton god, Nagash. Nagash is like +3 to cast. He casts like 20 times. He's like 1,000 points in the game. He's like literally half your army. It's either the dumbest thing or it's wacky wild fun time. That would probably go under the wacky wild fun time thing of bringing the gosh. So there's a lot of magic stuff like that. In 40k, there's stratagems, and your stratagems change based on your detachments, which are like the sub factions we talked about earlier. So if you're playing like the Tyrannid monster sub faction, they have a stratagem where it's like spend the command point, and when your monster charges in, you roll 6 dice, and for every 4-up, it does a mortal wound. So it's like you're getting bonus damage on the charge. So it's like you're spending a point to be like, I'm really gonna, kill him now by charging in. So 40k used to have like 90 stratagems you'd have to remember, and it was insanely dumb and annoying unless you were the person that like knew all of them. And then you would have players that did the gotcha moments where you remembered like 78 stratagems and you didn't remember the 90. And then somebody's like, you step near my model, I pop this, I get to shoot you, you're dead. Like gotcha moments where they don't tell you what's going to happen, but they're like, I hope he doesn't remember that I have my trap card. And then they're essentially just like, I've activated my trap card. And you're like, oh, that's cool, I forgot. So they went ahead this edition and like greatly reduced the amount of stratagems to reduce those things happening and to make it easier to get into.
I mean, I feel like that's the big thing, is making it easier to get into, because it isn't just learning the rules. There's a money barrier. There's the barrier of like, am I good at painting? Do I want to ruin this money model I just spent? There's all the dice, and there's finding people to play against. A lot of barriers to entry for this game.
I would say the easiest way to get in is either the Spearhead for Sigmar that I mentioned, which is just like you buy the box, and then that's essentially your army, and you can play against somebody else who also has a Spearhead box, which is just like a start collecting. Or in 40K, they have Kill Team, and that's kind of similar. It's like a little skirmish game, and you just buy a box of Kill Team, and usually it comes with terrain and models, and usually it has 2 armies in it, and then you and your friend can just like build and paint it together. A lot of people will like split a box, so if it's like $200, they'll each pay 100, and then you have like a little game you can play and kind of learn the rules, because a lot of the rules in those skirmish games are the same as the main game, so it's like a good entry point. So that's probably the best place to start.
All right, I love Warhammer as a concept.
Right.
I love watching people play. I love sitting down just painting and shutting my brain off and having a good time. But it really is about finding your crew that you can play with and have fun with and determine rules with. And not everything needs to be a tournament. It can be just we're goofing and we're having a good time. And I think that's probably a key as well.
Yeah, no, you definitely need the right people to play with. Like the little group I've formed is like, there's like probably a group of like 7 or 8 of us, with like 3 or 4 of them being the main ones I play with because they're available most of the time. You form that group, and then everybody, has different play styles and armies, and it's fun to like play with each other every so often. But you can like switch it up when you meet that group of people you play with. So like we'll play board games. We'll be like, let's 40K, let's do Sigmar. Like you play, you play. One week we did like a little Spearhead tournament, because the games are faster, so we'd play like a bunch of games all at once. So it's really nice to do that. So it's like going to your local game store or wherever you might have, and kind of just hanging out there is probably the best way to meet those types of people.
Yeah, that's pretty smart. Anything else before we wrap it up? Anything else people need to know about the world of Warhammer and actually playing it?
I would say don't be afraid of getting into it. I think it's essentially like I'm trying to explain all of Dota or League of Legends in a span of like 2 hours, because it's like you can get into the like minute details of just like, you shouldn't stand in this bush at this right time, you shouldn't like this, you should take red buff at like 15 minutes. Like there's so many little details that you can't even explain until you've learned the core of the game, that it's like it's just impossible. Right. So you have to like literally play the game. I would say there's things called battle reports online for both Sigmar and 40K. If you look up battle report and just type in 1 or 2 armies, you'll find like a billion battle reports at this point. It's just people that play against each other with like 2,000 points. There's like some insane ones. Like they got like production values. They got like score shit. They got rules popping up on the screen. They got like smoke and shit coming on. Like they got some crazy battle reports. So you can easily find that for anything you're looking for, to learn about like, how does my army play? What's it look like when they're painted and playing against each other? How do they move? And once you kind of understand these rules and learn it a bit more, then you can watch along and be like, dude, I know that thing. Or like, this is when it's the shooting phase. This is when they're going to shoot. Oh, they're doing that. Well, you can understand what's happening instead of being like, oh, they're just rolling dice.
Sure.
Right. So it's like, that's really nice. Plus, most people aren't going to be playing in tournaments. So like, you're just going to be playing against other normal people, and they're going to get rules wrong. Like, you're never going to play completely correctly. Like, there'll be times where we had like a friend, he'll be like, it's like, I measured it, it's like 23. And we're like, is that 23? Because that's like, you like got 25 inches there. And he's like, I already moved. And then he's like, all right, just why'd you move it already? He's like, I don't know. Then everyone's like, all right, if you started here and you measured, like, all right, but if you, he's like, I popped the command, I popped the blood tie point so that I can spend it to re-roll my thing. And he's like, all right, you know what? On a 1, 2, 3 you did, on a 4, 5, 6 you didn't. You just re-roll. So the rules are like so much to interpret, because they have to rewrite the rules all the time as well, where they'll patch shit, and the patches are just word corrections. They'll be like, we said wholly within 18, but we meant just 18, because wholly within 18 and normally 18 is completely different. Because if it's wholly within, that means your entire unit of whatever you have has to be wholly within the range of the ability or the wizard casting or whatever it is. And if it's just 18, then it can be like 1 fraction of this model's base is within 18, so it counts as the entire unit. So like, there's so many little wording things that people will also just take and spin their own way of like, I can do this because if you interpret the rule this way, and then they have to go back and be like, okay, how do we word this so that that guy doesn't have the ability to do that?
Sure.
Like it's a lot of that. So
I imagine in tournaments or just with friends, you're doing a lot of looking up information.
yeah, especially when you're first starting out. It's a lot of like, you got your books open and your app and your cards, and you're just like, all right, what's this do? But once you pick it all up, it goes by a lot faster. But that's like anything.
Nice. Well, Crendor, thank you for taking the time to tell me all about Warhammer, both 40K and Fantasy, Age of Sigmar, and how to play it on the tabletop. This was really fun. I learned a lot.
Yeah. And then maybe one day I'll play against you in one of those games. I'll teach you how to play like a skirmish game or something.
I would have to use your units because I'm about exactly 2,000 short of any army.
Yeah, no, you would just use mine. That's fine. I got plenty. Don't worry.